The morning sun cast long shadows across the obsidian streets of Vtherra, the warrior city of the Krath. Seren Vale walked with measured steps, her small human frame dwarfed by the towering crystalline structures that surrounded her. Behind her, 6 predator cubs padded on all fours, their razor-sharp claws clicking against the stone with each step. The eldest Kortil walked closest to her left side. His silver-streaked fur rippled with barely contained pride, his amber eyes fixed on the human who had done the impossible, earned the right to escort them. Miss Vale, Kortil rumbled in his species' guttural tongue, which Seren had painstakingly learned over 18 months. The warriors are gathering. Seren didn't need to look back. She could feel them. Dozens, then hundreds of Krath warriors emerging from their dwellings, their massive forms falling into formation behind her small procession. The ground trembled with their synchronized footfalls. "I know," she said softly, her voice steady despite the weight of what was happening. The Krath were apex predators, a species that had conquered 12 star systems through sheer martial prowess. They stood 3 meters tall, possessed strength that could shatter steel, and had never, in their 10,000-year recorded history, allowed an outsider to touch their young. Until Seren Vale. It had started 6 months ago, when a plasma conduit had ruptured in the youth training center. Seren had been there as a human diplomatic observer, a position most Krath considered ceremonial and pointless. When the explosion tore through the western wing, when adult Krath were trapped behind collapsed rubble, it was the small human who had crawled through spaces too narrow for any warrior to enter. She had pulled out 12 cubs, one by one, her hands bleeding, her lungs seared by toxic fumes. She had refused medical treatment until the last cub was safe. That cub had been Kortil. The Council of Claws had convened for 7 days after that incident. The Krath had no framework for what Seren had done. In their culture, only blood kin could risk themselves for cubs. The act of a stranger doing so was incomprehensible. It broke fundamental assumptions about how the universe worked. Finally, High Warlord Keshara had made the pronouncement. Seren Vale would be granted the honor of escorting the rescued cubs to their first day at the War Academy. It was the highest honor their civilization could bestow on a non-Krath. It had never been done before, but there was more to the honor than Seren had initially understood. Commander Talvik, who had become something like a friend during her time on Vtherra, had explained it the night before. "When you walk those cubs to the academy," he had said, his voice unusually gentle, "every warrior in this city will follow you. It is our way. The cubs are our future. The one who protects them walks ahead of us all." Now, as Seren led the small procession through the Avenue of Blades, she understood the full weight of what was happening. Behind her marched not just a few honor guards, but the entire warrior caste of Vtherra. Thousands of Krath, each one capable of tearing her apart with a single swipe, walked in respectful silence. She was leading an army. The younger cubs began to grow anxious as the War Academy came into view. Its massive gates loomed ahead, carved with the names of legendary warriors. This was where Krath learned to become apex predators, where cubs transformed into the soldiers who dominated the galaxy. One of the smaller cubs, a female named Sileth, moved closer to Seren's right side. "I'm frightened," she whispered. Seren reached down, slowly, carefully, and placed her hand on the cub's shoulder. The crowd of warriors behind them fell completely silent. To touch a Krath cub was sacred. To offer comfort was, "You've already survived the hardest thing," Seren said quietly. "The fire, the darkness, the fear that day. This is just school." Kortil growled softly, a sound of agreement. "She carried me through flames," he announced loudly enough for the nearest warriors to hear. "When I could not walk, when my legs were broken, her small arms did not fail. If she says we are ready, then we are ready." The procession reached the academy gates. Master Instructor Vorin stood waiting, his scarred form decorated with the markings of 1,000 battles. His eyes, one natural, one bionic, fixed on Seren. "Human," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "You have brought us our future." Seren bowed, the gesture careful and precise. She had practiced Krath protocols until they were muscle memory. "I returned to you what was always yours, Instructor. I only kept them safe for a moment." Vorin's expression shifted. something that might have been the Krath equivalent of a smile. You did more than that, Saren Vale. You showed them that strength comes in forms we did not expect, that courage is not measured in claws and teeth alone. The cubs began filing through the gates, one by one. Cortil paused at the threshold, looking back at Seren. Will you be here when we complete our training? If you want me to be, Seren said. I will make you proud, Cortil promised. Then he turned and entered the academy. As the last cub disappeared through the gates, Seren felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. She turned slowly to face the army of warriors that had followed her through the city. High Warlord Kishira stepped forward from the crowd. In her clawed hand, she held a blade, obsidian and silver, perfectly balanced. She knelt, bringing her massive form down to Seren's eye level. This blade belonged to my grandmother, Kishira said. It has been carried in 73 battles. I give it to you now, not because you are a warrior, but because you have shown us what it means to protect without question, to sacrifice without hesitation. You have shown us humanity. Seren accepted the blade with trembling hands. It was heavier than she expected, and she suspected she'd never truly learned to wield it. But that wasn't the point. Thank you, she whispered. The High Warlord stood. Then in perfect unison, every Krath warrior in the avenue struck their chests with their fists, the salute reserved for legendary heroes. The sound echoed through the city like thunder. Saren Vale, human diplomat, stood before an army of predators and realized something profound. She had not changed them. They had not changed her. Instead, they had shown each other that the galaxy was larger than any one species' understanding, and that perhaps was the greatest victory of all.